You ever feel that knot in your chest when someone talks over you, brushes you off, or just flat out disregards your presence like you don't matter? That quiet sting when someone crosses a line and you question if you should say something or just let it go again. We've all been there, disrespected, overlooked, undervalued, and it starts to chip away at you slowly, quietly, until one day you don't even recognize who you've become trying to keep the peace. But here's the truth. No one tells you. The moment someone disrespects you and you say nothing, you've silently agreed to the terms. Harsh? Maybe, but real. And the more you let it slide, the more they think it's okay. People don't just randomly treat you poorly. They watch how you treat yourself, how you respond, how much you're willing to endure without consequence, and they adjust accordingly. You don't have to scream to be heard. You don't have to fight to be seen. But you do have to decide right now how you're going to let people treat you moving forward. Not with ego, with standards. Not with noise, with clarity. Because here's the truth, disrespect doesn't start with other people. It starts with what you tolerate. It starts with all the times you didn't speak up, all the times you laughed off the comment, all the times you convinced yourself it wasn't a big deal. Well, it is a big deal. You're a big deal. And the way you respond to disrespect isn't just about them. It's about what you're teaching yourself to accept. So if you're ready to stop being the easy target, if you're done explaining yourself to people who don't care to understand, if you're ready to stop chasing respect and start commanding it, then let's talk. Because the game changes the moment you realize you don't have to force people to respect you. You just have to stop giving them the option not to. Stop explaining yourself to people who don't listen. It sounds simple, but it's one of the hardest habits to break, especially if you've been taught that being understood is how you prove your worth. But let's get real. If someone doesn't respect you, they aren't listening to understand. They're listening to argue, to dismiss, to twist your words into something that fits their narrative. Think about how many times you've tried to explain your feelings, your boundaries, or your decisions to someone who made you feel like you were being dramatic, too sensitive, or unreasonable. You poured your heart out trying to get them to see your side. You repeated yourself. You softened your words. You tried again and again, only to leave the conversation feeling small, misunderstood, and completely drained. Why? Because you were speaking to someone who never intended to hear you. Some people aren't confused. They're committed to misunderstanding you because it serves their ego. They don't want clarity. They want control. They don't want to make peace. They want to maintain power. And the more you explain, the more you feed their illusion that they deserve an explanation in the first place. Here's the truth. Explanation is earned, not owed. You don't have to explain your boundaries. You don't have to justify why something hurt you. You don't need to provide a PowerPoint presentation for why you decided to walk away from disrespect. When someone truly respects you, they don't require excessive justification. They listen. They care. They adjust. If you're constantly explaining yourself, chances are you're doing it to people who already made up their minds about you. Let that sink in. People who value you won't need a long speech to get it. And the ones who don't, they'll never get it. No matter how many different ways you try to say it, you could write it in a letter, say it calmly, say it with passion, say it with tears in your eyes, and still they'll roll their eyes. Still they'll twist your words. Still they'll accuse you of overreacting. Not because you're wrong, but because your truth makes them uncomfortable. And instead of rising to meet your level, they try to drag you down to theirs. So, here's what you do. Stop. Just stop. Stop wasting your breath. Stop arguing for your limitations. Stop offering clarity to people who thrive in confusion. When someone disrespects you and you find yourself about to explain why it hurt, pause. Ask yourself, are they even capable of receiving this truth? Or are you about to hand your vulnerability to someone who only uses it as ammunition? Silence isn't weakness. It's power. Sometimes the strongest statement you can make is no statement at all. Your energy is sacred. Your peace is expensive. Protect it like it matters because it does. People who constantly demand explanations usually don't want resolution. They want reaction. They want control over how you feel, how you think, how you move. And the moment you stop reacting, you take back that control. This doesn't mean you walk around with a cold heart. It means you choose discernment over desperation. It means you recognize that not everyone deserves access to your reasoning. You're not cold, you're clear, and clarity is power. There's a difference between communication and performance. Communication is for mutual understanding. Performance is what you do when you're trying to be validated. If you find yourself constantly rehearsing your words, walking on eggshells, or over-explaining your intentions, it's not a conversation, it's an audition. And what exactly are you auditioning for? Respect, approval, permission to exist as you are. You don't need any of that. You don't need their permission to be yourself. You don't need their agreement to hold your boundary. You don't need their validation to know your worth. When you stop explaining yourself to people who don't listen, you start listening to yourself. You start hearing your own inner voice again, the one that's been drowned out by overthinking and self-doubt. That voice? That's your compass. And when you honor it, your life begins to change. You stop tolerating the bare minimum. You stop chasing conversations that go nowhere. You stop letting people treat you like a problem to be solved instead of a person to be respected. Let them be confused. Let them assume. Let them talk. You don't owe anyone closure if they've already slammed the door in your face with their actions. You don't owe anyone understanding if they've proven they have no interest in understanding you. You owe you peace. You owe you self-respect. And the moment you stop explaining yourself, you start reclaiming both. So the next time someone disrespects you and expects you to explain why you're walking away, why you're setting a boundary, why you're no longer available for the same old games, look them in the eye, stay grounded, and say nothing. Let your actions speak for you. Let your silence echo louder than your explanations ever could. Because people may not always hear your words, but they will always feel your absence. And that right there is the kind of statement they can't ignore. Setting boundaries sounds simple in theory. In practice, it's a war zone. Because the moment you start protecting your peace, people will accuse you of being difficult, selfish, or changed. And you know what? You have changed. You finally decided that your time, your energy, your mental clarity, and your emotional well-being are no longer up for grabs. And that's where real growth begins. The truth is, most people are perfectly comfortable with you until you stop serving their version of you. The quiet you, the overly available you, the agreeable, accommodating, endlessly forgiving version of you. But the moment you draw a line, the moment you say this is as far as you go, and no further, suddenly you're the problem. But you're not the problem. You're the solution that stopped enabling their comfort at your expense. Setting boundaries isn't just about saying no. It's about saying yes to yourself without apology. It's about recognizing that not everyone deserves access to you. Not everyone has earned the right to be in your space, to take your time, to drain your energy, or to disrupt your peace. And the people who get upset when you set boundaries, they're the exact reason you need them. But here's what most people get wrong. They set boundaries, but they don't enforce them. And a boundary without enforcement is just a suggestion. It's a hollow line in the sand that people will step over the moment it becomes inconvenient for them. Boundaries aren't something you simply talk about. They're something you live, something you guard with conviction. And when people test them, and trust me, they will, you don't explain, you don't argue, and you definitely don't backpedal. You enforce. Enforcement is what separates the strong from the performative. Because the moment you set a boundary, people will poke it, push against it, try to see if you're serious. They'll test you with little comments. They'll guilt trip you. They'll make jokes at your expense. Why? Because they want to see if they still have control. And if you let that slide, they'll keep disrespecting you, just in more subtle, calculated ways. That's why you need to set boundaries like a warrior, not timidly, not politely, not with a disclaimer, but with the calm, grounded certainty of someone who knows exactly what they will and will not tolerate. This isn't about being aggressive. It's about being rooted, firm, clear. You don't need to shout. You don't need to justify. You just need to be consistent. And let's be honest, consistency is where most people fall apart. They set a boundary, but the moment someone cries, gets defensive, or threatens to walk away, they fold. They make exceptions. They let things slide just this once. But each time you do that, you're training people to ignore your limits. You're showing them that your boundaries are negotiable. And here's the brutal truth. People treat you according to what you allow. So stop letting guilt drive your decisions. Stop managing people's emotions at the cost of your own well-being. If someone feels uncomfortable because you no longer allow what you once tolerated, that discomfort is theirs to deal with, not yours to soothe. You're not responsible for how people react to your boundaries. You're responsible for enforcing them. Think of your life like a fortress. Not everyone gets through the gates. The ones who make it past the drawbridge do so because they've shown respect, consistency, honesty, and effort. Everyone else, they stay outside. No drama, no fight, just distance. Because protecting your peace is not rude. It's necessary. You're not shutting people out. You're filtering out the noise. And sometimes the people you have to set the strongest boundaries with are the ones closest to you. Family, old friends, coworkers, partners. That's what makes it hard. But here's the thing. Boundaries are not about pushing people away. They're about preserving the connection in a way that's healthy, balanced, and rooted in mutual respect. If someone can't handle your boundary, it means the relationship was only sustainable when it favored them. Let that sink in. You're not the villain for putting yourself first. You're not cruel for protecting your energy. You're not selfish for deciding that your mental and emotional health come before someone else's comfort. In fact, the highest form of self-respect is refusing to abandon yourself just to keep someone else from feeling uncomfortable. This kind of boundary work isn't easy. It takes courage. It takes unlearning the idea that you owe people unlimited access to you. It takes being okay with disappointing others, knowing that you're no longer willing to disappoint yourself. So from this moment forward, set boundaries like a warrior. Don't whisper them. Don't ask for permission. Don't dress them up to make other people feel better. Speak them clearly. Enforce them unapologetically. And when people show you who they are in response, believe them. Because the people who respect your boundaries, those are your people. The ones who resist them, those are your lessons. Either way, you win. You weren't put on this earth to be liked. You weren't born to shrink yourself into someone else's comfort zone, to smile through disrespect, or to silence your voice just to keep the peace. And yet, for so many people, the quiet obsession with being liked is exactly what keeps them stuck, tolerating poor treatment, avoiding hard conversations, bending over backward to earn validation from people who don't even value them. But here's the truth. No one tells you. Being liked is easy. All you have to do is agree with everything, say yes when you want to say no, and never challenge anything that might make someone uncomfortable. Being liked is what happens when you abandon parts of yourself to fit into someone else's mold. It's a performance, a survival tactic, a way to stay safe in a world that rewards approval over authenticity. But respect, that's different. That's earned. But respect doesn't come from being agreeable. It comes from being grounded, from having the courage to stand in your truth, even when it's unpopular, from setting boundaries and not backing down when they're tested. Respect is not about being loud. It's about being clear. It's not about being feared. It's about being firm. And once you shift from needing to be liked to choosing to be respected, everything changes. When you try to be liked, you filter your words. You second guess yourself. You say what you think they want to hear instead of what you really mean. You tolerate jokes that make you uncomfortable. You apologize for things that aren't your fault. You give more than you receive, hoping that if you just keep proving your worth, they'll eventually see it. But they won't. Because people don't respect what you offer for free. They respect what you protect. Respect begins when you stop chasing approval. When you stop explaining your choices to people who aren't living your life. When you stop negotiating your self-worth with people who couldn't care less about your standards. You don't have to be rude. You don't have to fight, but you do have to decide that being respected means more to you than being liked ever could. Think about the people you respect the most. Are they the ones who tried to please everyone? Or are they the ones who had presence, strength, conviction, the ones who made you sit up straighter just by walking into a room? Those people aren't trying to be liked. They're too busy living their truth. And ironically, it's that unshakable authenticity that draws people in. People-pleasing might win you attention, but it never earns you respect. Because deep down, we all know the difference between someone who stands their ground and someone who molds themselves to fit every situation. One earns admiration. The other earns temporary favor that disappears the moment you say or do something unpopular. You can't lead, grow, or build a strong life while chasing approval. Because to build anything meaningful, you're going to have to make decisions that upset people. You're going to have to say no. You're going to have to outgrow relationships, enforce boundaries, and walk away from comfort zones. And if your identity is rooted in being liked, every one of those moves will feel like a crisis. But when your compass is set to self-respect, you don't flinch. You know your values, you know your worth, you know what you're available for and what you're not. And you no longer fear losing people who never truly saw you to begin with. Being liked is based on performance. Being respected is based on principles. Being liked depends on external approval. Being respected begins with internal alignment. Being liked might get you invited, but being respected keeps you at the table. So ask yourself, what's your priority? Do you want to be liked by everyone and respected by no one, including yourself? Or do you want to walk into every room with the quiet, unshakable strength of someone who doesn't need to be liked to feel whole? Because the moment you stop needing permission to take up space, the moment you stop filtering your truth to keep others comfortable, the moment you stop saying yes when your soul screams no, that's the moment you become powerful. It won't always be easy. Some people will walk away when you stop performing for them. Some will label you difficult, selfish, arrogant. Let them. Their discomfort is not your burden. Their disapproval is not your responsibility. What is your responsibility? Owning your voice, defending your boundaries, living your truth. Even when it's inconvenient, especially when it's inconvenient. Because respect lasts. Respect builds. Respect creates space for real connection, not the kind based on performance, but the kind built on truth. Stop trying to be liked. Start demanding respect. First from yourself, then from the world. You'll lose a few people, but you'll gain something far more important. Self-trust, peace, power. And that's a trade worth making. Every time, silence and distance are often misunderstood. People associate silence with weakness, passivity, or avoidance. They associate distance with bitterness or coldness. But in reality, both silence and distance, when used intentionally, are among the most powerful tools you can have when dealing with people who don't respect you. They're not acts of revenge. They're acts of self-preservation, self-respect, and power. They are how you teach people that not everything, especially you, is available on demand. We live in a culture that demands constant communication. If you don't reply fast, you're seen as rude. If you don't explain yourself, you're called difficult. But when someone crosses a line, when someone disrespects you, silence is not just appropriate. It's essential because silence speaks volumes. It says, I saw that, I felt that, and I'm not going to reward it with a reaction. You see, most people who disrespect you are looking for one of two things, control or chaos. They either want to dominate you with their behavior or bait you into a response that gives them a sense of power. When you raise your voice, over-explain, or emotionally react, you give them exactly what they want, your energy, and energy is a currency. Every time you explain yourself to someone who has no intention of listening, every time you argue with someone who's already decided to misunderstand you, you're making a withdrawal from your emotional bank account. But when you go quiet, when you remove your energy, your words, your access, they feel it. And not because you're being petty, but because you've interrupted the pattern. You've stopped playing the role they're used to. Silence disrupts. It makes people uncomfortable because it removes the option of control. There's nothing to argue with, nothing to manipulate, just distance, just space, just consequence. Silence is clarity. It says, I no longer need you to understand. I no longer need to explain myself. I no longer require closure from the very person who caused the wound. And that kind of silence, it's deafening because it reflects maturity, control, and most of all, self-respect. Now let's talk about distance. Distance is not punishment. It's protection. Emotional, physical, mental, whatever kind of space you need to maintain your sanity and peace. You are allowed to claim it. Distance is where healing happens, where reflection takes place. It's the difference between reacting impulsively and responding with wisdom. Because from a distance, things become clear. Patterns emerge. You begin to see who someone really is instead of who you hoped they'd be. And more importantly, they begin to see who you are without their influence. The more access someone has to you, the easier it is for them to manipulate your emotions. But distance removes that access. It puts the power back in your hands. It creates a clear message. I am not available for disrespect. I am not accessible to people who don't value me. I do not negotiate with chaos. People who don't respect you often count on your emotional investment to keep you entangled. They rely on your need for closure, your desire to fix things, your instinct to explain and be understood. But when you replace that with silence and distance, you change the entire dynamic. You stop being reactive and start being sovereign. And here's what happens next. Those who truly care will notice the shift. And they'll either step up or step out. Silence filters out the noise. Distance filters out the nonsense. The people who respect your silence are the ones who are worthy of your voice. The people who honor your distance are the ones who deserve your presence. But there's one more piece to this. You have to be okay with the discomfort that comes with it. Silence and distance can feel lonely at first. You'll question yourself. You'll feel guilty. That's because you're breaking a cycle. You're detoxing from the need to be heard, to be right, to be liked. But give it time, and that silence will start to feel like peace. That distance will start to feel like freedom. It's in the quiet where you reclaim your voice. It's in the stillness where you realize just how much noise you were tolerating. And when you return to the conversation, if you choose to, you do so on your terms, with clarity, with strength, with boundaries that no longer bend. You don't always need to speak to make a point. You don't always need to engage to have power. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is say nothing. Walk away and let your absence do the talking. Because silence is not weakness. Distance is not coldness. They are both power moves when used not from anger, but from awareness. From knowing that your energy is sacred. Your time is valuable. Your peace is non-negotiable. So the next time someone disrespects you, ask yourself, do they even deserve a reaction? Or would your silence say more? Would your distance do more? In a world obsessed with attention and noise, silence and distance are your ultimate acts of self-respect. Use them wisely. Use them boldly. Use them like the warrior you are becoming. Your life is a reflection of what you tolerate. And every time you lower your standards to make someone else comfortable, you send a message, not just to them, but to yourself. That your values are flexible, your boundaries negotiable, and your self-worth up for debate. The truth is, if you want to experience meaningful change, whether in your relationships, your career, or your personal peace, you have to upgrade your standards and stop making exceptions for people who consistently show you they don't deserve them. It starts with recognizing that your standards are not too high. That lie is often told by the very people who benefit from you, keeping them low. You're not asking for too much when you expect honesty, consistency, effort, respect, or emotional maturity. You're asking for the bare minimum, but over time, especially when you've been hurt, dismissed, or manipulated, you may start convincing yourself that expecting the bare minimum is somehow unreasonable. That's how the cycle begins. You compromise once, then again and again, until one day you look around and realize you've built a life filled with people, habits, and situations that drain you more than they grow you. Every exception you make chips away at your foundation. You tell yourself, it's just this once, or they didn't mean it, or maybe I'm being too harsh. But deep down, you feel it. A quiet tug inside you, reminding you that this isn't what you deserve, that you're shrinking yourself just to avoid confrontation or loneliness. But here's the truth. Making exceptions for people who repeatedly show you disrespect is not kindness. It's self-abandonment, and that's a price too high to keep paying. Upgrading your standards doesn't mean you become cold or unforgiving. It means you become discerning. You stop handing out chances like candy to people who've done nothing to earn them. You stop justifying behavior that drains your spirit. You stop negotiating with people who only show up when it's convenient for them. You begin to move differently, not because you're better than anyone else, but because you finally remembered who you are. When you raise your standards, people will notice. Some will fall away. They'll accuse you of changing. They'll say you're too much now. But you have to ask yourself, were they really there for you? Or for the version of you that made their life easier? The one who never said no. The one who never held them accountable. Let them go. You don't need a fan club. You need a circle that reflects the values you're building your life on. And make no mistake, raising your standards is lonely at first. You'll say no more often. You'll walk away from conversations that used to drain you. You'll stop explaining yourself to people who never really listened. And you'll probably lose people. But that space you create, that's where alignment happens. That's where your peace expands. That's where the right people show up. Not because you begged, chased, or convinced them, but because you became so rooted in your self-worth that they had no choice but to match your energy. Stop making exceptions for inconsistency. If someone says they care but shows up when it's easy, believe their actions. If someone says they'll change but continues the same patterns, believe the history. Don't let apologies blind you from repeated behavior. Don't let potential convince you to stay in places where you're barely surviving. You're not here to fix anyone. You're not here to babysit broken promises. You're here to grow, to evolve, to surround yourself with people who mirror your growth, not resist it. Upgrading your standards also means looking inward. You can't demand what you don't embody. You can't expect loyalty, honesty, or discipline from others if you're constantly betraying yourself. So ask yourself, where in your life are you making exceptions for your own laziness, your own excuses, your own comfort zones? Because the moment you raise the bar for yourself is the moment everything around you begins to shift. When you stop tolerating your own excuses, you stop tolerating them from others. When you show up consistently for your goals, your boundaries, your truth, you begin to attract people who do the same. This isn't about perfection. It's about alignment, about refusing to lower your vibration just to be accepted by people operating at a frequency that no longer matches your growth. It's about choosing peace over approval, clarity over chaos, depth over convenience. So the next time someone crosses your line, stop justifying, stop explaining, stop making an exception for their bad day, their trauma, their personality. You can be compassionate and still walk away. You can be understanding and still say, this isn't for me. Holding people accountable doesn't make you harsh. It makes you whole. In a world where so many people settle for crumbs, dare to expect the full meal. Don't apologize for wanting more. Don't shrink to fit environments that are too small for your soul. Don't silence your standards just to be accepted by people who haven't even earned access to you. You deserve consistency. You deserve effort. You deserve alignment. You deserve to stop explaining why you deserve it. Upgrade your standards, and once you do, never lower them again, not for comfort, not for history, not for fear of being alone. Because you'll find your people, you'll find your peace, you'll find your purpose, but only after you stop making room for everything and everyone that was never meant to stay. If there's one truth that will change everything for you, it's this. You teach people how to treat you by what you allow, what you accept, and what you reinforce. Every time you stay silent in the face of disrespect, every time you make an exception for bad behavior, you write the rule book for how others are permitted to show up in your life. That ends now. You were not born to tolerate disrespect, to water yourself down for approval, or to keep peace that costs your dignity. You were born to lead your life with courage, with clarity, and with unshakable self-respect. The people who can't meet you there will fall away, and that's not a loss. That's a filter. You're not losing anything worth keeping when you choose yourself. So stop explaining your worth. Start enforcing your boundaries. Stop trying to be liked. Start being respected. Let your silence echo where words have failed, and let your standards rise so high that only those with truth, effort, and integrity can reach. This is your life, your energy, your peace. Protect it like it matters, because it absolutely does. No more warnings, no more excuses. From this point forward, respect is no longer optional.